You know, there used to be a time in this country where the most American thing you could do was punch a Nazi. But since the introduction of fluoride into our water system, it seems like our bodies have become rounder, our skin softer, and our balls smaller. Instead, these days we debate the validity of the ideology and grant it a prime spot in the great marketplace of ideas. Back in the day when white nationalists like Richard Spencer came onto the scene, people like me said that maybe we shouldn't give white nationalism a platform. Some of the same exact platforms that gave Richard Spencer a space to spread his ideology were central to Trump reaching young white men who overwhelmingly voted for Trump. And many of those close to Donald Trump, like Elon Musk, very loudly espouse white nationalist ideas. So people like me had a very good reason to be concerned, but we're often pressured to reach across the table. And one of the ways that people wanted for especially bloggers and creators like myself to do that is to do these live conversation debates with people who are diametrically opposed to the things that we believe in. And not just believe in, but are. As a Black transgender woman, I've often been invited to essentially sit across from a conservative and justify my validity to them. And interestingly enough, I was recently invited on a very, very popular YouTube channel whose entire shtick is doing just that. And in this video, we're going to talk about why I'm not going to do that and why I'm done reaching across the table. But I am getting ahead of myself. Hi, my name is katblaque, and I like to think that I make content for introspective hot people. And if you're here, I'll assume that's you. And if you're brand new here, you know exactly what to do if this video pleases you. Click my button and join us right here on the channel. So I have been mostly familiar with Jubilee's channel through clips that I've seen on TikTok. I have not seen a full Jubilee video, but I was recently contacted by a Jubilee producer and they wanted me to come on for one of their episodes where it's like one person surrounded by a bunch of other people. The request I got was for their series Surrounded, and I was invited to an episode called One Detransitioner versus 25 Trans People. Now, if I had to guess, I would probably guess that the detransitioner who is going to end up in this video is probably going to be a very popular right-wing speaker, and they're most likely going to definitely be a white person who now identifies as a woman, because that is kind of who conservatives really like to focus on, people who were once trans masculine and also white, because they like to sort of make this argument that the trans agenda damaged the body of somebody who frankly could have been a viable mother to a white child. I could have said that with a lot more grace, but that's frankly what it is. Like, let's just be realistic about it. That's quite literally what it is. And here's the thing. Like I said, have not seen a ton of Jubilee content, but something I've noticed about a lot of Jubilee videos is that quite frequently they have one very popular right-wing presenter or speaker and several people who are like college students or maybe even like other content creators who don't have the same degree of media training. And you know what? I'm familiar with this particular format because it's the same format that popped up during the anti-SJW era of YouTube. I was very much a center figure of the anti-SJW YouTube era because people quite frequently used me for response content. And back then, a lot of Ben Shapiro's videos were taking off. In fact, a lot of people were inspired by Ben Shapiro's content, and a lot of his videos back then were just videos of him at college campuses debating with college students. It always sort of seemed like low-hanging fruit to me in a lot of ways. And frankly, what I observed of a lot of Ben Shapiro's stuff is that he has this way of just speaking really fast and speaking very confidently. And if you're a person who doesn't do that, it's hard to keep up with that. And more often than not, I sort of see a lot of the videos where he is successfully debating as videos where he's just frankly better at speaking, if that makes any sense. I'm aware of the fact that there is actually a surrounded episode featuring Ben Shapiro. My theory is that Jubilee is kind of like a right-wing situation, right? It seems strange to me that they always have access to like an endless stream of right-wing presenters, but when they have people on the other end, it's always people who frankly don't speak about this for a living and probably aren't going to be as good at making the arguments. Like I said, I've only seen a limited amount of Jubilee content, so maybe that's not true. What frustrates me about Jubilee is that everything that's kind of like this, it likes to entertain the premise that these two sides are just as valuable, make just as good points. And the reality is that is not true. To me, the idea of needing to hear Richard Spencer out was always about introducing, in a widespread way, white nationalism into this country, normalizing it to the point where people who would not consider themselves to be white nationalists suddenly now feel as though white nationalists may have some decent points. Jubilee likes to act like these two sides are the same, and they're not. They don't have the same degree of power. They don't have the same degree of ability to oppress. No matter how many men wanted to debate with women about the state of feminism back in the aughts and the 2010s, women right now have effectively lost the ability to control their own bodies. That's the reality of it. The power has always been in their hands. And right now we're seeing people desperately argue that that power should remain in the hands of white men. So we can't pretend that these things are the same. We can't pretend that these positions are equitable because they're not. And what aggravates me about this shit is right now, people are pulling language out of universities. I'm going to read you a list. These are words that are being banned on the university level. Equity, equitable, inclusive, inclusion, safe space, BIPOC, implicit bias, intersectionality, anti-racist, oppression, gender identity, LGBTQ, lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, queer, non-binary, decolonized, colonizer, marginalized, underserved, microaggression, whiteness, anti-colonialism, institutional racism, systemic racism, white privilege, white fragility, social justice, bias, racism, minority, Latino. So we had all these debates way back in the day about how we need to see both sides and how we need to entertain somebody else's perspective. And maybe we should listen to the racist. Maybe we should listen to the white supremacist, right? And we did that as if something like this would never happen. It's almost as if the entire premise was flawed. It's almost as if we can look at our history and see that shit like this could happen, is going to happen. It's almost as if we currently live in a country where they're trying to take away that education so that the people don't know how to protect themselves and how to watch out for what's to come. The reality is they're going to move to silence people like me. The reality is them trying to do that in Texas at the university level is just going to be ground zero for them silencing speech federally everywhere. I know I said this in my last video, but I've been really liberated because of this election, because I've spent so much time trying to talk to people about this and people didn't listen, and I got harassed for it. The same motherfuckers who way back when joined in on harassment with me are the same motherfuckers rubbing shoulders with Trump right now, eager to claim, I guess, what they think is their destiny as white men. But back then they would have said, oh, racism is a thing of the past. Racism doesn't exist in this country anymore. During a time where Donald Trump and his ilk are trying to remove words like racism and equity from schools. Who benefits from that? And this is the issue that I have with the Jubilee bullshit. What I know this Jubilee video that I was invited to be in really is an opportunity to have a rational person who rejected transgenderism surrounded by a bunch of unhinged, crazy trannies who are very obviously not happy in their lives. Do you know why I reject the premise of this one detrans versus 25 trans people video? Because it seeks to ask the question, is being transgender something at all? Is it something that people should do? Is it something that is valid? Is it something that should exist? And I know that I live very happily in my body. There's no question that I have at all about that. Transition was not a mistake that I made. Transition was not something that I will ever regret. Transition saved my life. Access to gender affirming care saved my life, to the point where I don't even really think about being transgender in my daily life. If I didn't have a fucking YouTube channel, I would never talk about it. And so sometimes it annoys me that I can exist in my body so happily, but people still think it's worthy of debate. As though I'm not living proof of the fact that people can transition, live happily, and live relatively normal, well-adjusted lives. Yes, I am a weirdo in some ways, but I live the same life most people do in this country. I work, I pay my taxes, I go out, I love, I eat. And these debates have always been about getting me in front of somebody who doesn't believe in my humanity and getting me to justify it. I can't just say that I'm happy. I have to explain it to you. And I know that at the core of it all is just this desire to say that the truth I know of myself isn't true. It doesn't matter how much I personally celebrate the differences between myself and a cis woman. People will always believe that I don't quite understand my biology. I don't quite understand who I am. I am not living in tune with my body in the way that I should be. And you know, that's the funny part about it, because let's really clock this for what it is. What this really is people being afraid of validating the idea that you can break out of that box. That's really what it is. If you buy into the premise that I have transitioned, I live happily, and therefore it's valid and real and true, you must then also believe that some of the things you were taught about being a man, some of the things you were taught about being a woman may not exactly be true, right? And for a lot of conservatives, this is threatening to them because it destroys so much of what they hold on to, right? And that's, I think, the true agenda behind videos like the one I was invited to be on. It's to legitimize the idea that people like myself don't really deserve to be here or to be accepted. You know, there's a reason why The Matrix was made by trans women, right? Like, trans people, we exist in this way that is so threatening to those who rely on binary. You know, white supremacy relies on a binary, black and white. Patriarchy relies on a binary, man and woman. If man and woman are not fixed positions, that is very, very dangerous. There's a reason why so many of Trump's people that he surrounds himself with have a lot to say about returning to traditional gender roles. And there's a reason why abortion access is something that they despise, because it allows women to do more than just become a mother. You know, as they point fingers at trans people and call us groomers, they're turning a blind eye to the fact that child marriage is legal in several states. They defend it on the grounds of religion, right? And if we look back at our history and we look at the state of women, what we know is that old men have always wanted to be with young girls. And that the core of many Christo-fascist movements has always been that. These men want to impregnate young girls and keep them forever in a situation of subjugation beneath them. And right now, they're just openly talking about that. Right now, they're just openly bragging about that. And they have the power now to do it. So this whole idea that both of these sides carry the same amount of value and weight, has always been bullshit. And that's why I refuse to go on a show like Surrounded and entertain the premise of this reaching across the table bullshit. The reality is there's more than just one detrans experience. Go watch my video about Julie Vu and detransition if you want to hear more about that. There's more than one detrans experience. And a more reasonable conversation might have been 10 detransitioners and 10 trans people. Maybe you could hear the diversity of detransitioners. Maybe right-wingers could learn that most people who detransition will retransition, that we categorize detransitioning in multiple ways. Sometimes people categorize a shift in their identity as a detransition, right? There's a complexity to what detransitioning looks like, but they're invested in showing one image of what detransition looks like. And this array of what are likely going to be dizzying opinions from multiple different types of trans people who are obviously not going to feel the same way, probably ganging up on this detransitioner who I'm positive is going to say some very terrible, triggering and upsetting things, and then sit back and that's what this is. And I don't entertain the premise of doing shows like that because I don't want to waste my time. That's not a good use of my time. I know for a fact that they don't really pay people for this shit, right? And you know what? I just came back from a presentation at Penn State University. It was so nice to have conversations with the students. There was actually this really, really cool drag show. Oh my God, actually, because I have it right here. I actually bought my first tie at the student drag show that I went to after my presentation. And, you know, it was so nice to be around queer students who needed love and support right now. You know, for me personally, I remember being a trans student at a college and how isolated I felt and how important it was for me to see grown-up trans people who are functioning and living their lives. Part of why I do what I do is so that I can continue to do that for other people, right? And for me, when it comes to speaking stuff, I will always opt to do something like that over something like The Middle Ground or Surrounded. It just doesn't seem like a good use of my time at all. It isn't. And I don't really feel like I'm wrong for that, especially after the way this country just went. Right now, what we're going to be seeing is Trump and his ilk pull back civil rights protections for so many groups of people, purely so that they push white men up. And it's almost like years and years and years and years and years ago when we were talking about why we shouldn't entertain the premise of white nationalism, some of us knew what the fuck we were talking about. It's crazy to me that we exist in a country where something like that can happen, and there's still people who sit around and say shit like, we should hear them out. What's the context of it? The context of it is white supremacy, baby. The context of it is that we live in a culture where white men who own land have always been seen as the real Americans in this country. Some of us knew that when these ideas spread, they would poke at some wounds that exist in America that would ultimately result in genocide, in violence. At this point in the timeline, there's still going to be people who watch this video and are going to say, well, it's not happening. It's not happening. Like, you know, you're just kind of like making this up and pulling it out of thin air. But the reality is we're going to start seeing it, and we're going to start seeing it sooner than you think. Under Trump's regime, I don't think anyone's going to be asking to reach across the table, especially if we're not there to be at the table. Anyway, so I just wanted to share that because there's been a lot of conversation about like reaching across the table right now. I am fully in the position that if you voted for Trump in this last election, I want nothing to do with you. Like, I don't care if you think I'm closed-minded. I don't give a fuck. So anyway, maybe I will watch and respond to a Jubilee video. Maybe I will watch the Ben Shapiro Surrounded video. If I do that, I may throw that up on Nebula or maybe just on my Patreon. I have not decided, but definitely go check me out on both platforms if you are interested in seeing more content from me. Patreon has been where I have been sharing a lot of my thoughts that I don't want to share publicly. I'm working on slowly but surely taking some of my oversharey conversations from TikTok and putting it onto Patreon, so just look out for that. On that note, that's all I have to say. If you enjoyed this video, please support me over on Patreon, and I want to give a shout out to my most recent Patreon members. A huge shout out to Druja Smits, Carmen Jones Bebe, and Tamar. Thank you so much for supporting me over on Patreon. It means an awful lot to me, especially right now. Like I said, I don't know how long I'm going to be able to upload YouTube content in this new administration, so anything y'all send me right now is going to be used for bearing down and surviving, I guess. On that note, I will talk to you guys next time. As per usual, I want you to always remember and to never forget that you are beautiful and you are loved. Bye.